In the midst of global attention focused on United States strikes against Iran, Ukraine has quietly executed its own operations. Although not remaining entirely silent, as Iran burned, Ukrainian forces ripped open Russia's underbelly with a series of shocking strikes targeting the final assets keeping Russia afloat in the war in Ukraine. Russian air defense systems have proven just as ineffective for Moscow as they did in Iran, and Ukraine demonstrated this by eliminating target after target. The headline figure stands at 105,200 Russian targets. Before delving into the main content, comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.
That figure represents the number of targets Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky reported Ukraine struck during the 28 days of February 2026. For comparison, this averages approximately 3,750 targets per day, underscoring how Ukraine's defensive strategy has pivoted sharply toward unmanned aerial vehicles. Ukrainian forces struck nearly every Russian asset available that month. An analysis of March operations will illustrate just how expansive Ukraine's target list has grown. Yet one specific target category addressed in February served as the sole enabler, allowing Putin's forces to sustain ground pressure: drone operator positions.
Russian unmanned aerial vehicles provide enormous support to Putin's ground troops. Long-range Shahed attack drones relentlessly hammered Ukrainian cities and rear military infrastructure, eroding national morale and stripping frontline Ukrainian soldiers of the supplies needed to defend against Russia. On the front lines themselves, Russia attempted to employ FPV drones and reconnaissance drones, though not as effectively as Ukraine, to conduct raids and establish kill zones that Ukrainian troops could not risk entering. The heart of Russia's entire drone operation lies with its operators, and Ukraine realized in February that action was required.
Stop targeting the arrows, start engaging the archers. As Syrsky himself pointed out, Ukrainian forces could not destroy every FPV drone Russia deploys on the battlefield. Quote, "The Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to maintain the advantage in employing multi-engine FPV UAVs, even though Russian troops have achieved production of more than 19,000 FPV UAVs per day," Syrsky stated in a Telegram post announcing the statistics. If accurate, this marks a massive increase from the 2 million FPV UAVs Russia is believed to have manufactured in 2025, averaging nearly 5,500 per day. Eliminating every such drone may be impossible. What Ukraine could do, however, is target the operators controlling them. After all, even the best FPV drones still require a human behind the controls to guide them. Striking operator positions would render hundreds, if not thousands, of FPV drones inoperable, and if Ukraine executes correctly, Russia loses far more than just those sites. Operators fall at their consoles, forcing Moscow to scramble for replacements. Russia has tried to assemble as many operators as possible. Syrsky reported that Russia plans to expand its unmanned systems personnel in the military to 101,000 members by April 1st. Thus, one key achievement for Ukraine in February was proving to those operators working far behind the lines that they are not safe. Ukraine can reach them, and Ukrainian forces can remove FPV drones from the fight without destroying the drones themselves. The same logic applies on the long-range drone front. When discussing Russia's Shahed drones, it is easy to assume they are launched into Ukraine from inside Russian territory, and many are. But one major advantage of occupying large swaths of Ukraine is the ability to launch Shahed drones from much closer to intended targets. A drone launched from occupied Crimea, Luhansk, or Donetsk travels far less distance than one originating from deep inside Russia. That means less exposure time and fewer risks, precisely what Ukraine needed to counter. Destroying more than 4,000 operator positions in a single month contributed heavily to that effort. On the long-range drone front, Russia produced 30,000 Shahed attack drones per year as of September 2025, according to United 24 Media.
Moscow also plans to double that output in the future. In January, RBC Ukraine reported Syrsky's comments that Russia aims to reach the capacity to launch 1,000 attack drones into Ukraine each day. Russia has not yet achieved that level, and the conflict in Iran may have disrupted Putin's plans, since Tehran would still supply key components, enabling Russia to manufacture Shahed-type drones. Nevertheless, Russia continues to unleash massive Shahed drone swarms. The same February in which Ukraine neutralized 105,200 targets also saw Russia launch 5,059 long-range drones, an increase of 13% from January. Russia additionally set a record for missile launches that month, though that will be addressed later. Stay tuned, because Ukraine struck other targets as well, one of which is vital to Russia's missile industry.
Returning to drones, Ukraine's February strategy clearly aimed to rip out the heart of Russia's entire unmanned aerial vehicle operation. Never mind the arrows, although Ukraine still destroyed many, as Syrsky revealed. Eliminating operator positions proved far more critical because arrows cannot fly without archers or their bows. When adding more than 100,000 additional targets neutralized, including equipment, troop concentrations, command centers, and much more, the result is continuous attrition of Russian forces, with Ukraine focusing on drones to remove one of the greatest threats Putin's soldiers can pose. Then the focus shifts to March. With the heart of drone operations shattered, Ukraine did not slow its pace for even a minute. The Kremlin likely hoped for a respite. Putin's ground proxies pleaded for Ukraine to stop dismantling the links in the faltering war machine.
But Ukraine pressed on. Strike after strike tore open Russia's underbelly in just the first 12 days of March. And only a few representative examples highlight how systematically Ukrainian forces conducted this weakening campaign. Begin with air defense. On March 12, the Kyiv Post reported comments from the head of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Brovdy. He stated that Ukrainian forces successfully destroyed 19 elements of Russia's air defense network from March 1 to March 12, including elimination of an S-300 system and a Tor surface-to-air missile unit. The SBS birds, as Brovdy called them, achieved numerous strikes through this point in March, and Brovdy was pleased to showcase several in his March 12 Telegram post.
In a nearly 4-minute video, the same sequence repeats. A Ukrainian drone locks onto a target, closes the distance, then scores a direct hit. These are Ukraine's undeniable results. Most strikes were recorded by the weapons themselves, and in many cases, as seen in the footage, Ukraine followed up with additional drones to survey the burning wreckage of destroyed equipment. For the specific strikes, the Tor system was eliminated near Berdyansk in the Russian-occupied part of Zaporizhia province. Designated by NATO as SA-15 Gauntlet, this Soviet-era air defense system handles short-range targets and is designed to intercept helicopters, aircraft, and cruise missiles. Russia likes to portray the Tor as effective against Ukrainian drones.
In reality, the fact that those same drones destroyed it proves the $25 to $27 million system is not as capable of intercepting drones as Putin expected. The S-300 Ukraine eliminated sat in occupied Luhansk near the settlement of Borovenki. Another Soviet-era system, the S-300 is frequently used by Russia to provide mobile air defense coverage for troop clusters and key military facilities. It handles many targets similar to the Tor, while adding some ballistic missile intercept capability. Yet the S-300 remains the air defense system Ukraine has struck repeatedly over 4 years.
with the March 12th operation marking the latest in a long series aimed at paralyzing Russia's air defense network. Just as with the operator positions mentioned earlier, clear reasons drive Ukraine's campaign against Russian air defense. According to Ukrainian data, 1,332 of these systems have been destroyed since the war began, through March 14th. The rationale is straightforward. Ukraine needs to carve out as many safe air corridors as possible over its own territory to enable deep strikes into occupied regions and Russia proper. That may not surprise observers, but what does is the failure rate of many Ukrainian long-range attacks into Russia. Euromaidan Press revealed in December that Russian air defense intercepted 90% of Ukraine's drones and missiles.
That is a robust interception rate, although it still means 10% of Ukraine's long-range weapons reach their targets. Ukrainian planners view this as massive waste of resources and drones that could succeed if Russia's air defense network were paralyzed. Therefore, the strikes remain essential. What Ukraine seeks to achieve in 2026 is an environment where far more long-range attacks succeed. That will constrain Russian forces on the front line, since Ukraine's strategic targets encompass operator positions, oil facilities, warehouses, Russian fuel stocks, and other elements sustaining Putin's army. Removing those key components translates to a far weaker Russian front.
Russia's air defense concerns must also be considered. Sanctions have crippled the Kremlin's ability to produce additional systems. A December article in the Kyiv Post highlighted that Russia's inability to obtain certain critical components for air defense manufacturing represents its biggest vulnerability. Without components, new systems cannot be built, or reconstruction lags far behind the rate at which Ukraine destroys them. Supply chain disruptions have forced Russia into a difficult choice. Either rush air defense assets from the Russian interior to the front lines to replace losses, or leave gaps protecting targets closer to home. Every Russian air defense system relying on foreign components faces severe production delays. In fact, the Kyiv Post asserts Russia stands just one precise strike or timely sanction away from losing the ability to manufacture any more S-400 systems, which would remove a vital asset from the fight. Either way, Ukraine gains. Safe air corridors open, enabling even more strikes against Russia's war machine.
Among the strikes, Ukraine also hit other targets, including an attack on a Russian missile production center. Meanwhile, another target category struck in March advanced the front-weakening strategy, a fuel train. 2 days before March 12 proved an explosive period for Russia. On the same day Ukraine destroyed the S-300, forces also eliminated an ammunition depot in occupied Luhansk, destroying thousands of shells, while wrecking a repair unit of a Russian artillery brigade at Yakimivka in Zaporizhia. But while Russia coped with those hits, additional Ukrainian drones raced into the Luhansk region to destroy a train carrying fuel and lubricants near Dovzhansk. The importance of this strike is beyond dispute. Cutting fuel supplies means Russian tanks and armored vehicles cannot operate.
It also renders mobile artillery and air defense suddenly immobile, turning them into sitting ducks for further Ukrainian strikes. With lubricants ignited in the attack, Ukraine further eliminated a critical maintenance component. If equipment cannot be stopped outright, at least it can be forced into rapid degradation, becoming less effective and less reliable. Interestingly, Ukraine mirrored Russian tactics in this fuel train strike. Both sides fully grasped the centrality of logistics, especially rail transport. Roughly 90% of Russian cargo moves by rail. If Russian troops need fuel, it must arrive by train. Russia had pressured Ukrainian railways since early March, according to reports from Ukraine's state railway company Uksalitsnitsia. Bridges and rail yards came under attack, and Ukraine returned the favor on March 12th by destroying Russia's fuel train.
Somehow, the situation grew even worse for Russia. With the heart of drone operations ripped out and the underbelly torn open,
Ukraine also took a large bite out of Russia's missile strategy. Early in March, Russia launched a combined missile and drone assault on Kharkiv. Notably, Moscow employed a new missile designated Izdelia-30. The weapon has a range of 932 miles and can carry approximately 1,764 pounds of explosives. United 24 Media reported that Russia began firing these missiles from Su-34 fighter jets inside its own territory. Ukraine responded.
On March 10th, Ukrainian forces used their own missiles to strike the Kremny L microelectronics plant in the border Bryansk region. Storm Shadow took center stage as Ukraine unleashed 7 British missiles against the plant's primary production facility. Post-strike imagery confirmed Kremny L had been eliminated. Along with it went Russia's capacity to produce additional Izdelia-30 missiles, since the microelectronics components for this weapon were manufactured at that exact site. Once again, Ukraine fought fire with fire, underscoring the importance of Western nations continuing to permit Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia using the missiles they supply.
The heart, underbelly, and brain of Russia's strategy have now been lost, carrying major implications for Ukraine. Ukrainian Air Force Colonel Yuri Ignat stated that Russia is relying more heavily on ballistic missiles in 2025-2026. In fact, Ukraine endured a record missile barrage from Russia in February. Moscow fired 288 missiles into Ukrainian territory, averaging more than 10 per day. Russia had not launched that volume since 2023, signaling heavy dependence on long-range strikes as the conflict deepens into 2026. At least that had been the plan.
With the Kremny L facility wiped out, at least one Russian missile type, and the newest one at that, must halt production. Adding Russia's loss of more than 105,000 targets in February, including more than 4,000 operator positions, the destruction of key air defense systems, the fuel train elimination, and numerous smaller strikes reveals an extremely successful month and a half for Ukraine. Just keep watching Iran, Ukraine is signaling to the world. Meanwhile, we will continue tearing apart Russia's war arteries. And make no mistake, Ukrainian strikes will penetrate deeper and strike harder as 2026 progresses. How is that known? Ukraine has rewritten the rules of airstrikes by creating something unprecedented in its ingenuity. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.